Welcome to Gensler. Thank you for hosting us tonight to launch the Urban Vision Alliance platform. Let's get a round of applause. I know this is a few years in the making, and thank you, Gabriel, for inviting me to come say a few words. I've got my confidence piece of paper here to go over a couple points that I wanted to make. The Bay Area Council is the largest business association in the region. We've got over 300 members, and we've been working on housing and transportation issues for many decades, but it wasn't until about 2018 when we surveyed our members that suddenly we got a surprise. Homelessness for the very first time it broke the top 3 concerns of Bay Area Council members when asked, what are the biggest problems and priorities facing you and your company in the San Francisco Bay Area? Homelessness was right up there with transportation congestion and housing affordability, which of course is part and parcel of the homelessness problem. So from that, since we did that initiative, we did that polling of our members, we've been working on sponsoring legislation in Sacramento. We've done several reports on homelessness in the region, a couple groundbreaking, first of their kind regional perspective reports on homelessness. And a couple of things really stand out. One is that from a per capita perspective, California has the 3rd largest homeless population in the United States. We're behind New York, we're behind Hawaii. A lot of people are surprised by that. They assume we've got the largest. In absolute figures, we're the largest state. On a per capita basis, we've got the 3rd largest. The second thing that is most important, I think, is that we have by far the smallest inventory of shelter and housing solutions for our homeless population. And it's not even close. Only about 30% of California homeless residents have access to shelter, compared to 74% of homeless Americans outside of California. Again, not even close. And the difference between that number and the national figure is really the difference between the street conditions when you walk outside this building versus buildings in other cities and other parts of the United States. The other thing that has been a feature of our work on homelessness is that I'm often asked by the Bay Area's largest employers, what can I do? I want to do something. I want to be part of the solution, and I don't know how. And of course, as an advocacy organization, I tell our members, let's focus on advocacy. There's laws in Sacramento that need to be changed. Policies, regional, city policies, state policies that need to be changed. We can work together on that. And that's good. But there's other more concrete things that businesses can do. And when I reflect on the peculiar strengths of this region, we have here some of the most talented and innovative people in the world on all of the sectors that are needed to put together a great service program for our in-need neighbors. Real estate development, architecture, design, legal services, all of these play a key role in providing solutions and building an actual project and opening the door and welcoming people off the street. And that's hugely important because those tools can help reduce the cost, and reducing the cost is the name of the game here. It's extremely hard to scale solutions, as we have been doing in San Francisco, for example, where the average cost of a unit of permanent supportive housing is $750,000. Statewide, it's $500,000. How are you going to shelter and provide housing for 160,000 people if the per unit cost of solving the problem is that high? It can't be done. We need to do more. Yes, more public subsidies are needed, but we also need to do more to bring down the cost per unit. And that's going to allow us to create more doors, bring more people in, and turn more stories about despair into stories about hope. And so that's why I'm really excited about this initiative. And I've known Gabriel now for a couple years, since you really first started thinking about putting something like this together, you and Dawn. And watching this come to fruition, I think is really special. And so thank you, Dawn and Gabriel, and thank you to the companies who have invested in this platform to connect your services and the value that you can create to actual beds, actual doors, and actual projects to solve the problem. So with that, let me introduce the team. Gabriel Baldinucci, of course, is the CEO of Urban Vision Alliance. Give him a round of applause. He's the co-founder and he's the lead development of Urban Vision Alliance Vision and Strategy. He's got 20 plus years in the startup space from Singularity University and from the Virgin Group. And Dawn Piper, she's the Chief Impact Officer and co-founder and board director of UVA. She's got over 25 years of experience working in the human capital space. Let's give a round of applause and let's hear about their solutions to homelessness. So thank you.
Well, hello, everybody, and welcome to the official public launch of Urban Vision Alliance. We're just so thrilled that you are all here. And thank you to everybody who has joined us virtually. We really appreciate your support. And to start, what I want to do is I first want to thank Gensler for hosting us in their beautiful offices. They've been such an exceptional partner, taking every step of this journey with us, and we just appreciate all that they have done for us in helping us to get our startup operations going. But even more importantly, they've worked with other alliance partners to help them with their critical housing projects. And you're going to hear more about that later. So thank you. And it is actually very fitting for us to have the event in this space because we actually held our very first meetup here. So it's a kind of a full circle moment, if you will. So I appreciate everything that you guys have done for us. Whoops. The next thing that I want to cover is to talk about, our vision is a collective vision, and Gabriel is going to talk about our collective impact approach and our dedication to provide a portfolio of solutions, ones that are inclusive and comprehensive. And in that spirit of talking about collective impact, I want to give a heartfelt thank you to our alliance partners, our volunteers, board directors, advisors, and community leaders that have committed to work with us on finding a solution to this crisis. So thank you very much. There's deep gratitude for everything that you guys have done. Our passion is fueled by every individual and every organization that comes together and joins our movement. So we appreciate everything that these groups are doing. And our hope is strengthened as we build broader relationships and we strengthen and deepen that trust so that together we can solve this humanitarian crisis. So with that, I'm going to hand it over to Gabriel, and he's going to talk about our model, our approach, and our progress to date. But before I hand it off, Gabriel, I want to thank you for your vision and your leadership and your commitment to getting us to this milestone. So thank you.
The truth is, nothing would happen without Dawn. So this is as much a thank you to you as it is her thank you to me. So we're here to talk about street homelessness. And I'm not going to spend time talking about the numbers and about the stories. You've already heard numbers from Adrian, but the truth is we hear the stories and we hear the numbers all the time. And we see the problem every day on the news and in front of us. So what I'm going to spend time talking about instead is the system that we have to try to address this issue and how we can improve it. When I started on this journey, I was asking myself, how is it that we have all this underdeveloped land, short buildings that could be tall buildings, parking lots, we have all this capital, and we have all this talent and expertise, and we're unable to solve this problem? And you can hear this question from different people. So I went out and I tried to understand what efforts were already underway. And after a ton of meetings, I realized I couldn't find anyone to communicate to me a large, comprehensive, shared vision and plan, complete with addresses and timelines. And it's really not anyone's fault. It's a result of some of the systemic issues that we have, that we're dealing with. Sorry, I lost my advance. Tech team, SOS. Okay, thank you. What I did discover on all those meetings, though, was that there are almost 100 organizations, different organizations working on homelessness in San Francisco, each with their own, sometimes competing agendas. And that kind of fragmentation for donors and really for anyone can feel discouraging. But that's not the only systemic issue. People feel like they don't have transparency and visibility into all the efforts that are happening, how these organizations might be working together, where the money's getting spent, what are the outcomes, which programs are working or not. They just don't feel like they have that visibility. They also feel like they're hearing conflicting policies and debate, and they see policies that don't make any sense to them. Finally, when they go outside, they don't see the problem getting any better. So all of this leaves people feeling like the problem is unsolvable, like it's intractable. People feel hopeless. And because they feel hopeless, they don't want to invest time and energy because they feel like it might be a waste. As a result, some of our best people, organizations, and assets are sitting on the sidelines. And to give you one glaring example, I met with a $500 million San Francisco foundation and I asked, do you give to homelessness? And they said, no. I said, why not? They said, it's a black hole. You throw your money in and it never gets solved. Well, today, we're launching Urban Vision Alliance to change that narrative, to say that we can solve street homelessness. And that if we can enable new ways for people to collaborate together, we can solve this together. Urban Vision Alliance is a California 501c3 nonprofit, and we're building broad public-private alliances to collaborate on large-scale housing expansions with integrated services. Our goal is to help build all the different types of housing that the city needs to meet this crisis, including emergency shelter, transitional housing, permanent supportive housing, and affordable housing. We also don't advocate or support only one type of program. We believe that homelessness is not a homogeneous problem and that you need to meet different people with different programs to meet the needs of the different individual unhoused. We need it all. We need all the types of housing and we need all the types of programs. So the reality is that as a society, we're going to continue to have to grapple with substance abuse, mental illness, poverty, and other root causes of homelessness. But what we should be able to do as a city is we should be able to create enough infrastructure to catch people when they fall and to provide a working system to provide them the care that they need and to have a functioning city as well. The truth is that we're not managing this crisis the way we need to be. And as a society, whenever we've faced complex challenges like this, we've risen to our best when the public and the private sector have worked together. The most recent example, of course, is accelerating the development of a vaccine to a global pandemic. Well, we can treat homelessness the same way. We can take the same type of strategy of mobilizing the public and private sector together. And that's what we're doing with Urban Vision Alliance. Our approach enables two things. It enables us to mobilize more resources, people and organizations to come in to help with the problem. And it also helps us to reduce the three big costs when it comes to addressing street homelessness. Those costs are land, the cost of developing buildings on that land, and the cost of operating those buildings and providing the services. And the way we work in our alliance to address each of those is first, we try to look for and promote projects where you don't need to purchase land. There are plenty of organizations and there are plenty of city, state, county, federal pockets of land, parking lots, and others where we can build up. And that means we can use our capital for construction and for operations. That's smart, that's efficient, that's common sense. And you're going to hear about one of those projects today. The second thing we do is we invite the real estate community to come in and take a leadership position and provide pro bono and discounted services to help develop those buildings and to collaborate strategically together to drive down those costs. And that helps with that second big expense. The next thing that we're doing with our alliance is we're facilitating partnerships between nonprofit service providers so that they can share best practices and so that they can integrate services. Someone said being homeless in San Francisco is like going to the motor vehicle 4 times a day in different parts of the city. Well, not only is that a terrible experience, it represents an inflated, really inefficient cost structure. By integrating services, we can create a better experience with better outcomes for more people at lower cost. And for our private companies, Our platform enables their people to have a way to participate in a solution. People want to help. They often just don't know how. And professionals with great expertise want to help and don't know how. We can also help shift that culture from when is the city going to fix this to what can I do to contribute and what can we achieve together. Ultimately, we can shift the narrative from this is unsolvable to we can solve this together. For government and city, we can help facilitate the private part of that public-private coalition to make it easier to collaborate with the business community. And we can also create tools to provide data, transparency, and communication to the general public so that the city can get better alignment with and ultimately support from the larger community. I'm proud to announce the first 32 members of our alliance, and we're adding more each week. These organizations represent a diverse set of industries, from design to construction to real estate development, shipping containers, legal, consulting, technology, and more. Between them, they have the ability to design and build new buildings, to run programs, to develop software to track the effectiveness of different programs, and ultimately to mobilize the community. And we didn't engage these organizations the typical way. Most of the time, someone will just get an RFP in their inbox to work on some random building. And that's how we involve the business community. No, we invited these organizations into a community and an ongoing conversation about how we can solve this together. That's a very different way to engage our business community. And when you engage people in a conversation about a shared vision to have big impact on the city, you unlock their passion. And we've seen the passion in these organizations. You unlock their leadership and you unlock their resources. This is what collective impact looks like. Our alliance partners so far have committed $7.8 million in pro bono and discounted services to UVA partner housing projects, and another $1.7 million to UVA overhead. These services, some of which have been delivered already, include things like legal work to get permits, design for buildings, architectural work, structural engineering, construction management, and much more. You might be thinking 7.8 million is a small number when you look at the total cost of constructing buildings for enough people. But remember that we're just scratching the surface on the business community. We're launching today. And more importantly, this represents an important shift in how we address this issue, because now we have people and organizations that are working together on one collaborative team. And that impact can have huge outputs for us. So if you are an organization, contact us if you want to get involved and be part of this alliance. It might not be obvious when you think about all the things we can use, but we can use hotel owners to provide rooms when outside architects come in to help. And we're going to continue to build this organization until we get into the hundreds of companies that are part of this alliance. So I want to talk for a minute about the first projects that we're supporting. And I want to give some context first. I mentioned already that we want to support all the different types of housing that the city needs. Again, emergency shelter, transitional supportive housing, permanent supportive housing, and affordable housing. But there's one type of housing that's painfully missing and in short supply right now in the city, and that's transitional supportive housing. We have to get away from this idea that we're going to solve this just with shelter and permanent housing. Think about it. When you go to college for 4 years, it's not permanent. You're there for a while and you're expected to leave at some point. But they don't call it college shelter. They call it college housing because you have psychological safety and because it's a specialty type of housing that's meeting your needs and your home while you transform and grow through a phase of your life. And that's critical. The homeless population is not static. Every month or year, it's different people. There's a flow coming in and out. And when you take transitional out of your toolbox, when you take it out of your supply, you're risking taking people who would otherwise have been temporarily unhoused and putting them at risk to be chronically homeless. Because we know that the longer you're on the street, the more at risk you are for substance abuse and trauma. Additionally, we know that people who have serious mental health issues and people who have serious addictions don't do well in hotel rooms by themselves. We need to have them in places where they can get the care they need. Hotel rooms are an important part of an overall strategy, and they're quick, which is great. But we also need to think long-term, and we need to build the kinds of structures that provide people with the security, care, and community that they need. So one of the biggest things we can do is we can realize that all transitional isn't the same. All shelter isn't the same. There are models that work and there are models that don't work, and all permanent housing is the same. We saw this same thinking with shelters. And people said, oh, they don't work. And they kind of threw them out. And then later on realized that if you add pets, partners, and possessions, that they do work. And you make some changes. And so we're doing the same thing, and you're starting to hear now the same thing with transitional. People are calling for interim, residential step down, transitional, because we're realizing that if you take it out, you have an asset where you could have moved 3 or 4 people over 2 years who might stay for 6 months each, and you're creating this backlog. And that's inefficient. There's a bigger lesson here that we need to take in how we have been working on homelessness. And that is what I think is one of the biggest mistakes we've been making, which is to confuse the specific for the general, to throw out entire categories of tools that we don't use, that we should be using. Think about it. We don't do that in the private sector. If you open a coffee shop on the corner and it doesn't work, you don't say, coffee shops don't work. You'll ask things like, was the corner wrong? Was the pricing too high? Is the ambiance right? Right? But we do that. We say shelters don't work. Transitional doesn't work. And then we realize that we've thrown out really important tools. We have to realize that we need all of it in a portfolio to meet the needs of the different people in the population, the different use cases that they're in at different times. And until we address that, until we make transitional part of housing first, because for some people, it's not just housing, it's the right type of housing, it's better housing. And it should fall under the umbrella. That needs to go all the way up to HUD. We need to include it in funding. Otherwise, we're not going to be able to solve this issue. So with that, I'm proud to introduce that our first 2 projects are actually transitional supportive housing. And with that, I'd like to call up Theo Ellington. And I'd like to call up Elizabeth Funk from Dignity Moves. And they're going to share their projects with you. And we'll start with Theo.
Awesome.
And here's your clicker, sir.
I'm gonna, can you click? Can you click
I
for
can
me?
click for you.
You
if
can click
want.
for me?
Yeah.
All right.
Just say,
So I got notes. Last time I did this, I forgot several points and I don't want to do that this go around. How's everybody doing? There we go. Major, hello. I do want to first just say thank you to Gabriel and Dawn and the entire UVA leadership. This has been 3 years in the making. I think we met 3 years before I started working for the Salvation Army. We met 3 years ago. So super happy to be here and super proud to be here. I also want to thank our alliance partners that we have been working with over the past several years. Ruben Junius, who helped develop our initial land use memos to determine what we can build at each of the properties. Gomez Vasquez International for really helping us paint a broad-based vision and committing early to helping us build out a master plan. Ginsler, of course, who has produced these slides, but also helped us sort of craft this master plan and help us create the vision of what we want to build. Webcor for giving us the cost estimates, right? We're going out to raise $50 million for our first project. And that's in part because we know the cost of what we want to build. Equity Community Builders, who is serving as the owner's representatives and project managers for our first property. And then on the program side, I mean, that's the beautiful thing about this alliance. There's the real estate partners, and then there's also the programming partners. Anybody here from Back on My Feet? Back on My Feet. I just got word that one of the clients that we worked with just graduated and is now a certified electrician after staying in our program for 2 to 3 years. So yes, transitional housing works when it's wrapped with services and it's wrapped with love and care and spiritual guidance, as the major knows very well. If you want to go ahead and go to the next slide. It's a complicated slide, but I'll explain it in just 1 second. Gabriel was right. When we, 2 years ago, initially talked about transitional housing and we made our pitch to different city leaders and different community groups, they laughed at us. And today we're hearing things like interim housing. Today we're hearing a more better appreciation for shelter. And this is, I think, a culmination of, I say, the silent majority finally rising up in the city and county of San Francisco and really demanding better of our local leaders and our nonprofit leaders and our private sector leaders. So the Salvation Army is looking to dramatically expand our social services here in San Francisco. We've been here since 1883, and we've had the distinct honor of being able to purchase real estate over 130 plus years. And that allows us today to do the most good and to continue to do the most good. I had to get that plug in. But it's living proof in all of our facilities, because tonight, over 750 people will be resting their head in the Salvation Army facility in the city and county of San Francisco. And this initiative will double our impact. We've got the capacity to add over 1,500 beds to the network here in San Francisco in existing properties that we own. Gabriel, I'm sorry, I know I'm probably over my 5 minutes, but I will speed this up. So this property shows our existing footprint here. And one of the beautiful things about this slide is we know that development will take a very long time in San Francisco. So we've already started to activate some of these properties and implement programming that shows that we are ready to do the work here and now and today. At 1156 Valencia, I saw Supervisor Mandelman here. We worked diligently, and I mean, this is somebody who cares and who shows up and who's on the ground and who holds folks accountable, because we were on the phone time and time again trying to figure out how to make this work in a community that needed mental health services for a distressed population. So we opened up a mental health respite center in collaboration with Supervisor Mandelman, Mayor Breed's office, the Department of Public Health, and PRC Baker Places. At 364th Street, another one of our sites here on this map that we want to develop. We said, what can we do to implement things now? We opened up a social service hub to service all of our facilities across the city of county of San Francisco. We're in every neighborhood just about, but using a social service hub in the heart of SOMA to make sure folks have access to services. Jesse Stevenson, right on 6th and Market, essentially in the mid-market area, we opened up a clothing closet. So for folks who want to come in and maybe rest their feet for a little bit or get a clean pair of socks, maybe get a new outfit for a job interview, we're opening that up and beginning to activate that property in a real way. During Christmas time, you will see lines wrapped around the block to make sure that families who can't afford or who want to see their kids smile on Christmas morning have a gift to share with their family. And then what I'm most proud of, what I sort of spent a lot of my time on, is 1275 Harrison, our Harbor Light campus, our flagship drug and alcohol rehab center. We said we're not going to wait to open up a new center. We're going to immediately expand our programming. We'll walk with faith, as we do in the Salvation Army, and figure out how to get folks off the street. So we've immediately expanded our program to 2 to 3 years for individuals who want to change their lives, who want to live a life of sobriety, who want to be transformed and live a productive life. And we're able to do that because we're building a new model. Next slide, please. If you don't remember anything else about what I say today, live, work, love. Those are the tenements of our initiative. Live, obviously, meaning the 1,500 housing units. We're building a program that allows our housing model to be flexible, so that we can not only respond to today and now, but we want to be able to respond to what's coming next and meet the demands, the future demands of the city. We are building 1,500 new beds intentionally, 2 to 3 years, again, to wrap our arms and hands and hearts around people in San Francisco who need our services the most. My friend Thomas Wolfe calls this model incentivized housing. the longer that you stay in our housing, the better the amenities get, the more opportunities you get, the better access you get to jobs, and the better access you get to these wraparound services. Sorry, Gabriel, I'm almost done.
No, go.
Work. I'm sure many folks in this room know and understand that economics is real. I know there's certain people in San Francisco that don't believe in supply and demand, but I will not go there. But economics is real. There's a severe workforce shortage happening. The last homeless point in time count noted that there's about 30% of folks who are homeless identify losing their job as the reason that they are living on the streets. So we think that we can help folks go through training, obtain their licenses like being able to be an electrician and move on and actually provide a living wage for themselves in a great city like San Francisco. And the last piece is love. And the two words that I will use that sort of drive the spirit of our program is accountability and self-sufficiency. And that's not just for the individual, that's for really all of us in this room, all of the community service providers, the city. We think that we can walk alongside our client. And when we have that one-on-one relationship, we're not just sending someone to these third-party organizations, we're walking alongside them and referring them to an actual human being that we, the Salvation Army, can hold accountable, and vice versa. There's more on my note card, but I will stop. So next slide, please. 850 Harrison. We are calling this the Momentum Builder. Right now, this building is a one-story building with a kitchen that used to serve all of our core units across the city and county of San Francisco. But we are hoping to use this facility really to build out the core of our programming. In this facility, 30 days of recovery, wellness, and detox for individuals who are coming directly off the streets. 6 months of residential treatment. And then again, 2 to 3 years of what we're calling extended recovery, workforce development, and wraparound services. So I am proud to announce that we are starting with 850 Harrison and proud to be a part of this alliance. Thank you so much.
Hi, I'm Elizabeth Funk. I'm the founder and executive chairman of Dignity Moves, and I'm so thrilled to be here. It's been a long time coming, and I'm not on the next slide yet. There we go. And I don't even feel like I need to give my speech because Gabriel basically gave it. I'm sitting here listening to everything you're saying. Well, that's exactly my point. So let me tell you a little bit about what Dignity Moves is about. Dignity Moves is focused on what we call interim supportive housing. You could call that transitional housing, interchangeably. And I want to start by saying that this, to end our housing crisis, what we desperately need is more permanent housing, both permanent supportive housing and permanent affordable housing. We are not in any way detracting from that. We need that very badly. Thankfully, in our city is taking that very seriously. They're working hard on building permanent supportive housing. There are a lot of projects in the pipeline, and there are a lot of smart people, a lot smarter than I am, who understand financing stacks and tax credits and all the things that go into that. So that's on track, but it's going to take time. It's really expensive. And in the meantime, people are languishing on our streets on waiting lists. And as Adrian mentioned, California, we're really behind on whether you call it interim shelter or emergency shelter, places where people can go in the meantime. And as Gabriel said, I'm telling you, they've already given my speech, people who are on the street, not everybody who falls into homelessness has a mental health and drug addiction problem. Some do, but a lot don't. 30 days on the street, and it's a different game. But 10 years on the street, then I got to say pretty much 100%, right? We've got to do something for people while they wait. And for a lot of people, emergency shelter with big rooms and bunk beds is scary. They've been through trauma. They're not willing to go. One of the folks in San Francisco's HSH told me that we'll go out to an encampment when we've got a vacant bed and maybe we can convince 1 out of 10 people to take it. So it doesn't work for everyone. It doesn't work for most people. And then COVID hit, right? And so Dignity Moves was founded on the idea that if we're going to attract people to come in where they can get the services they need their own room. And it's just fundamental. And your body doesn't even relax when you don't have a little bit of privacy, and never having any access to privacy. You can't get out of what I call survival mode. And we learned in 8th grade science that when you're in survival mode and fight or flight, your brain can't think about the higher and other things. You're terrified of getting raped or where your next meal is going to come from. If you can help people get stabilized and calm, now you have a chance. And some of those folks are going to need permanent supportive housing, but maybe not all of them, right? And if you have this interim stop where people can get some support, intensive case management, help working with them, there are many other paths out of homelessness. So Dignity Moves was founded on that idea. But then the second part is our housing is too expensive. There's nothing that's legally permitted that stands between a tent and a permanent apartment that costs $800,000 to build. We're missing rungs on our housing ladder. We've got to find something that's less expensive, and particularly for interim housing. We're blessed in California that the state issued emergency building codes that allow you to build stuff that is legal housing, that is safe and meets California safety standards, but it doesn't have to be held to the same standards that we're building our permanent buildings. And so we set out, we partnered with manufacturers doing prefabricated state-of-the-art panel systems that can be assembled really inexpensively on a site. Gensler helped design these for us. Thank you. Thank you to the Alliance for connecting us. Then these temporary projects, we set them up on parking lots, as Gabriel said, and we can do this for $30,000 per unit instead of $800,000. And they're like a dorm room in college. In fact, they're about the same size as my son's school room. And by the way, they do call that housing and they charge me for it accordingly. So, but it is a transitional place, right? And then folks graduate into whatever their next exit is. We also developed a more permanent version. The temporary one, we borrow land, we beggars, right? We take over a parking lot that's maybe a developer has got plans in 5 years. Ironically, the long entitlement process in California becomes our friend, and we can borrow that parking lot for the few years that they're figuring out their financing stack and their permits. But for when there's land available longer and a different budget, that's when we can build permanent projects. And so we're also doing 2 permanent projects that are funded by Project Home Key. So here's our 33 Golf site in San Francisco. I am proud and pleased to say that just today, our first residents moved in. So it's going to be, it's a thrill. It's a thrill. And there's 70 units that can hold individuals or couples. The first 30 are going to be open by Monday. We're kind of staggering the move-ins. And so, 70 people are going to be coming in off our streets. And as Gabriel mentioned, people will move through 2 or 3 times in a year. So we're talking about a couple hundred people. It's really, really a powerful model for relatively very little money. So the San Francisco project was funded primarily by Tipping Point, who's been a great partner, but it's also the construction is fully funded by philanthropy, private donations, the entire budget, which is about $2 million. And then HSH is leasing the land from a private developer and paying for all of the ongoing supportive services that are, of course, the important part. And we at Dignity Moves, what I like to say is we don't do the magic. We just create the space where the magic can happen. We create the place where people are willing to come, can feel safe, and can engage in conversations with case managers and supportive services. And we can help cities select who that is or not. We just really care that people finally get to a place where they're willing to and have access to the supportive services that they need. And we believe that happens in a community much more efficiently than when you're doing street outreach. In fact, my friend Joanne Price here from Life Moves tells me that their street outreach teams have maybe 3% success of getting somebody from a street outreach into permanent housing. And yet when people are in a safe, secure place, it jumps to 60%, right? So we can't do this efficiently when we're on the streets. So here's a quick overview of some of our other projects. I know it's hard to see, but we've got a similar project going in Santa Barbara. It's going to be in downtown Santa Barbara. Amazingly, we've got no NIMBYism at all. And I think it is largely because it's temporary. You tell people it's only going to be here for 5 years, and they're less worried about it impacting their property value. And interestingly, Santa Barbara County has this vision that every area needs to take its turn. So you pick them up 5 years later and you move them to the next site and then the next one, right? And so we kind of think of it as a hopscotch board. But we also have projects going in Rohnert Park and Alameda that will be more permanent. So that's Dignity Moves, and thrilled to say that literally today is the day that our organization and all of our planning has come to fruition. And it's been largely thanks to our partnership with Gensler and Urban Vision Alliance. So thank you.
So you might have noticed that we have projects that are really short-term and immediate, and then we have long-term construction projects. That goes back to that portfolio that we need to build in terms of type and in terms of timing. Some that are flexible and that can be moved around, and others that can serve a very strategic long-term purpose. So with that, I would like to now invite up some of our other Alliance members who are providing the support and services for these projects. Come on up and join us here. Please, everyone, welcome our panelists. Okay, I wish we could have all of our Alliance members up here. I really do. And before we start, I also do have to give an acknowledgement to our law firms. Goodwin Proctor has been amazing, and nothing would have gotten off the ground without them. Thank you. And Ruben Junius, as Theo mentioned, played a critical role. So thank you to both of our law firms for your incredible work and commitment. With that, let's just start on this end. Please tell us your name, your company, what your firm does, and why did you join this alliance? We'll start with you, Matt.
Well, thank you, Gabriel. My name is Matt Reese. I'm here on behalf of the thousands of colleagues from Webcore Builders that I work with, and we are a builder. We're a construction company, right? But our core purpose is at Webcore, we talk about it all the time, is building solutions and bettering lives. And I can't really think of a better way for us to meet that purpose than being associated with Urban Vision Alliance here. So, I mean, some of it's obvious, right? Bettering lives. I mean, there's 1,500 beds that ultimately we strive for will better the lives of those individuals and those transitional services. But it's heartbreaking for our employees. We work here in the city. We're part of the fabric of this city. We build here in San Francisco, and our employees come in and they see the situation, and they're working with people experiencing homelessness as well. So it's bettering their lives to be part of this, to help do this as well. And then, you know, also bettering the lives of all of the collaborative nature of all of our alliance partners. And then on the building solutions part, but like I say, we build things, and buildings cost money, right? Adrian touched on it when you spoke. It is expensive to build things here in San Francisco, but we really think that we can work collaboratively to build efficiencies into this and build those solutions that will get these built in an efficient, cost-effective manner that everyone will want to be associated with. So thank you very much for letting us participate.
This is actually really appropriate that you started and I go next, because you brought Langen into the fold of this. So I'm with Langen Engineering. We're always on projects really early, before anything is designed or built, or even often just ideas thrown out there. So we do the investigation of the land, environmental, geotechnical, and site civil, and we get everything ready so that it can be built on by Webcore and designed by Gensler. So we are really happy to be in this for various reasons. The most obvious ones are what you just mentioned, that we want to help the people of San Francisco, people that don't have housing, people that need a lot of support. And I thought it was really great to see so many young people at Langen jumping on this and wanting to volunteer that time. And they were just really passionate about helping everyone to, you know, make this a better place, because it's kind of gotten a little bit out of control. I think San Francisco really needs a little bit more initiative. And so, yeah, happy to be on this and do our part. Thank you.
Great. I'm Doug Zucker, and I'm representing all of Gensler, who we have probably 25 people that have worked on these projects in the last year. And Lisa Chumley's right there on the back, and Howe and Randy, who run this office, have supported this effort. And I think it's been amazing. We met Gabe probably 4 years ago and started talking about what we could do. And, you know, a lot of people come to us, we're a big business, and they ask for donations or money or something. And it really has nothing to do with what we do. We love to help people, but we're not using our skill set, right? And this was an ask where we could actually use our skill set. We design things, we design places for people. And so when Gabe came and asked us, it was like, this is such a good alignment with our core vision. And we really want to help people. We're really, I think, at this point where we are looking for purpose in all of our work. And this work is so full of that. And I second what you just said about the young people. I would say that this next generation is so looking for their work to be meaningful in their life. Less, when we started out, we just kind of needed a job, and we were doing something. And this generation's like, I don't just need a job. I want to do something meaningful. So we are, I think on the volunteer effort this weekend, after that, several people, I think three people have written saying, how can I help and get more involved in the work, which is so touching and so nice. So we have, as it has been mentioned here, we've been working for 4 years. We worked with Urban Vision Alliance to try to put together their kind of pitch deck as to who they were, worked with Don and Gabe. And then we got in touch with the Salvation Army through them and looked at, and they said, hey, we want to do a project. And we're like, well, do you know what you want to do? Right. And so we said, I think we should look at all of your land and master plan it so you kind of know what's going on. And we got introduced to GVI also from Gabe brought them in. And so we've been working together to look at master planning all of the sites and then start to work on those as they can fundraise for them, which was really amazing. And through that relationship, then we started meeting with Elizabeth and Sharon and the Dignity Moves folks, and have worked on these 4 projects, and there's a couple more in the works. And it's been really gratifying, I think, to be able to help that quickly. To think that these projects, unfortunately, they have like a time to their funding, and that time is like only like 9 months. And so you have to do it in the time that you would have a baby, right? So it's like this whole project gets birthed, and it's kind of amazing that can happen that fast. And we're so used to being bogged down, as people have mentioned, the city with these. It takes 3 years to entitle a site and then 3 years to build it, and to be able to make a difference that fast is amazing for us. So we are just delighted to be associated with people who care so much and are putting the magic into the situation. And we're hopefully creating the space where that magic can happen.
Okay, my name is Sandra Bidoff, and I am representing DCI engineers, structural engineers. So very happy and proud to be a part of this team. We will be working on, amongst other things, I'm sure, initially the Salvation Army sites with Gensler and the rest of this great team. When we were approached with this opportunity, I know that, everybody was all for it 100%. Looking forward to being able to make an impact with what we do. Obviously, we have a big part, just as Gensler does, with the built environment, and take pride in our designs and our structures. And it's great to be able to see them make a difference for the homeless population as well.
I'll save you for the end. Go ahead, Alvaro.
Good night, everybody. My name is Alvaro Gonzalez. I'm principal and partner with Gomez Vasquez International Architects. And thank you so much for inviting us to be part of this alliance. I want to share with you guys, when I met Gabe, I remember that he just started talking about the idea and the alliance, and he said, like, no one else sleeping on the street. Wow, that was like, actually like right now, and it's my pulse start beeping, and I say, damn, definitely we can help. Like, we are people designing for people, and we have the knowledge to change people, the moods, trigger different things through architecture. So I started thinking like, yeah, definitely we came with some, like starting thinking in standards, cost effective, how the building could get old without looking bad, without too much cost. But the other side is like, definitely we can do what we love the most, is how we can trigger good moods and bring and alter the pulse of these people and live better. you know? So thank you so much. And I'm glad to be part of this. Thank you.
So before I go to you, Lori, representing all of the Alliance partners, if you guys could just give another round of applause, because Urban Vision Alliance isn't about us, it's about them and the people that work in their firms that drive all of this work. And the reason I saved you last, because once Lori explains to you what her organization is, then my question for you is slightly different, which is you represent, and your team represents a large part of the community. And I'm curious, what does the community think about this?
Well, good evening, everyone. I'm Lori Brooke. I am a co-founder of Rescue SF, and my fellow co-founder, Mark Nagel, is right here. And I'm really glad to be here tonight and listening to what you said, Gabriel. Just like Elizabeth said, you took away my speech. So much of the stuff we agree upon. But let me just give you an idea of who we are. So Rescue SF is a coalition of San Francisco residents across the city, all 11 districts, who are advocating for compassionate and effective solutions to homelessness. And as many of you may be residents in San Francisco, and as you know, we haven't really had a seat at the table. You know, we do our day jobs and we're hoping that the city is doing their job in solving homelessness. And as we've looked out the windows, that's not happening with the speed that it needs to. There are people suffering on the streets and it's only getting worse. And so 2 years ago, I'm also the president of the Cow Hollow Association, and that's kind of where this started. I've been doing this for 23 years, kind of neighborhood advocacy. And so residents came to me and they said, like what both Gabriel and Theo said, is they said, we're frustrated. We see the decline of San Francisco, but instead of with their hair on fire, angry, which is what I've seen over 23 years when residents get mad, it was different. They said, how do we help? What can we do? Here are my hands, here's my time, my talent, my resources. Tell me what I can bring to this problem. And I was like, I don't know yet. Let me figure this out. And that was kind of the birth of Rescue SF. It was to understand what the city is doing well, what the city is not doing well, and where we as residents can play a part. And so we began by reaching out to all the different, being a neighborhood leader myself, it was a natural place for me to go, is to reach out to the neighborhood associations across the city and also the community benefit districts. And 2 years later now, we are engaged with about 45 different neighborhood associations and CBDs. And what we do is we bring them into a coalition where we are helping educate ourselves and them on the homeless situation in San Francisco and what role they can play. So we have, at this point, we've identified about 6 different areas where we think Rescue SF, with the support and advocacy of the other neighborhood associations, can make a difference. Like just to back up to one thing that you'll find interesting, when 2 years ago, before this got started, a neighbor sent me a documentary called The Seattle is Dying. And he said, look at that, watch that. He goes, I think this has language in it that helps the people understand why cities are having a problem. And the documentary kind of nets out the fact that the different levels of homelessness are often due to either lack of intervention, lack of enforcement, or lack of political will. And every city has a different place on that. Well, we think the role that we can play is the political will, being the voice of the residents and getting and making it clear to those, as you called NIMBYs, not to be NIMBYs, you know, where we can actually show up. So the 2 projects that you identified today are just spot on with areas that residents can support. There are things that residents wouldn't push back against. It's things that we actually identified ourselves. And so when we go out and talk to neighborhood associations, we share these plans and these ideas, and we say, these are a great idea. And you know, with residents, you get them involved early and you get their support, and then they feel they're part of the solution and they don't feel like things are thrust upon them. So that's what we're doing. We're spending the time to educate people on what's out there and the differences that could be made. And the response has been really good. And we're so excited about 33 Golf opening up. That's something we have been promoting heavily, the whole concept of the transitional interim shelter. We are really, really happy to see that coming live. And then the Salvation Army project, we have people that will come up to us and they say, you know, there's this great project in San Antonio, Haven for Hope. Let's do that here. And then they go, oh, but we don't have the land. Where are we going to build something like that where you have, you can bring so many people on board? And then the Salvation Army, you guys use your land. So I know that the residents will be extremely supportive of that. And thank you for including us and allowing the residents' voice at this table.
Thank you. The reason I wanted you to go last was because when we think about a coalition to address homelessness, we think about things like construction, housing, and programs. We don't necessarily think about a community organization, but that's an important part of our alliance. And we've just recently added another community organization to our alliance, which is Nextdoor. And so between Rescue SF and Nextdoor, they touch almost every single resident of this city. And that's powerful. When you think about what that means to get the community support, to get solutions passed, supported. But that's not it. It goes farther because everything we've done until now, we've done manually. We've built an alliance over email and phone calls and meetings and Zoom. But we need to scale this. We have thousands and thousands of people, and there's hundreds of organizations that need to get involved. And so what we're doing is we're building a collective impact platform. And now we're engaging technology partners, companies like Smartsheet and Deep Blocks for our collective impact platform that will enable us to not only scale the alliance here in San Francisco and how many buildings we can work on and how many organizations we can get involved and how many citizens can support it and ways for all of them to engage, right? We can also do something else. Scale this to the rest of the Bay Area and to the rest of California and beyond. We're already working with Major James Sullivan, thank you for being here, in Alameda County. And we have a prototype of our platform and we've added properties. Projects, Major Sullivan's for the Salvation Army in East Bay, as well as getting ready to add the additional Dignity Moves projects all the way to Santa Barbara. And we're having further conversations. This is really just the beginning. We're changing the way homelessness can be solved, and we're creating a platform for cities to collaborate from the mayor all the way down to every single citizen together to address homelessness and to have the transparency and visibility that everyone wants and needs and a clear way to engage. So we're going to be officially launching that in a few months. Stay tuned for more. But if you're involved with tech companies, come and see us. There's a critical roles that you can play to help address street homelessness and help us save lives. So with that, we've heard from all different kinds of organizations. Now I want to hear from one of our political leaders. Something was said here tonight, and we can't say it enough, which is ultimately we need more housing. We have to fix our housing supply problem across the state. That is the fundamental issue. We have to just bring housing costs down. Everything else we're talking about is trying to resolve that underlying problem. And so I'm proud to introduce someone who works tirelessly as a legislator, very hard to try to bring California housing, increase supply, bring those costs down, and isn't afraid to make bold proposals to create solutions for that. Thank you for joining us, Senator Scott Wiener. Please give me a round of applause.
Good evening, everyone, and I'm sorry I'm not there in person with you, and I look forward to being with you in person in the future. I'm here in Sacramento. I want to just really thank Gabriel and everyone with Urban Vision Alliance for the work that you're doing to try to come up with different and new approaches, because honestly, there's one thing we've learned is that the old ways of doing things when it comes to housing and homelessness are not really working. And we see that on our streets every day with the tragedy that is playing out. We see that with as we move people off the streets, new people coming onto the streets. It's just a deep human tragedy, and we have to do things differently. And fundamentally, it's about housing. We are short millions of homes, and anyone who tells you that we can solve homelessness without building an enormous amount of new housing, they also have a bridge to sell you. And so we can't talk about homelessness without talking about fixing our structural shortage of housing and making it so much easier and faster to build every type of housing, from market rate housing to subsidized below market rate housing to ADUs, to student housing and senior housing and housing for formerly homeless people, apartments, condos, single family homes, everything. We have to build all of it to stabilize our middle class and to make sure that our lower income residents who are housed remain housed and that people who lose their housing can quickly get new housing, and to make sure people living on the streets have a path to stable housing. And yes, of course, we have to invest in mental health and addiction treatment and all of the other critical and life-saving support services. But we need to be clear that most homeless people do not suffer from mental health or addiction issues. And we know that the streets make it worse for the people who are. And so we need that housing. And we need to make sure that we have more transition routes off of the street, whether it's tiny homes, supportive housing, different kinds of navigation centers. We have to be creative, and we have to make sure that we are removing regulatory barriers to creating this critical housing. And so what you're doing and what Urban Vision Alliance is doing is incredibly important, and just trying to think about these issues in a new way, because we have gotten stuck. And a lot of the work that I do and that you're doing is to try to get us unstuck. So again, thank you so much. And I look forward to working together to try to make sure that we do something very basic, which is to have everyone have an opportunity to be housed. Thank you.
While we're also talking about our political leadership, I want to acknowledge another one of our leaders who's here tonight, Supervisor Mandelman, who's doing incredible work, not just with the Salvation Army, but who's doing incredible work on this topic in general and in homelessness, who deeply cares. Thank you very much. And we look forward to collaborating with you. Thank you for being here. With that, we're going to open this up to Q&A, and I'd like to invite up our board member, Scott Ackerson. Scott is EVP at Prospera Housing, and I consider Scott one of the country's experts on integrating services. Scott managed over 180 partners and 70 nonprofits together. He spent decades working, starting as a social worker, and then leading programs for 1,700 people, and now working in affordable housing. Please join me in welcoming Scott. Okay, let's open it up for questions. Please. I think we need one more mic up here so we can pass it around. Oh, here it is.
Hello.
Thank you. I'm going to hand this one off to Scott, because Scott has experience doing something big like this before.
So in San Antonio, we did bring together a total of 180 organizations that previous to Haven for Hope were very much siloed, much like communities throughout the United States. What we found in bringing these partners together, and bringing partners together in a nonprofit is not an easy feat. There's a great deal of territorialism, turfism, funding competition, and those types of things. But what we found in bringing these people together was, one, we created a collective vision, and that's what Urban Vision Alliance is about, is creating that collective vision. The unintended side consequences of that was we had organizations that had been doing services the same way for 30 years and not really getting different results. But when you're used to doing it that way, you keep doing it that way. Bringing people together gave people a new way to look at things, a new way to vision things, and it gave us an opportunity to get everybody rolling in the same direction. So we had different service providers acting in different modalities. Bringing together all these partners on the Haven for Hope campus, we were able to train everybody in evidence-based practices that really end homelessness, and the outcomes really speak for themselves. A question, so the Haven for Hope campus was about a $100 million project, and it happened in 2010, and that's when the federal government repurposed emergency shelter grant funds. So most communities either downsized or eliminated emergency shelters, which is why I think we see such an increase in street homelessness. San Antonio, to my knowledge, was the only city that actually built a shelter on steroids. That's why San Antonio is not in the same crisis as San Francisco and LA and Portland. However, San Antonio is not far behind because we are not doing the development of affordable housing. You can't just put all your resources into homeless intervention services. You have to be equally or more investing in upstream interventions around access to affordable housing, much like the center was talking about. It's not just transitional. It's not just emergency shelter. The Haven works from a recovery model, and a tenet of recovery is you have to meet people where they're at and meet their needs. And that's what this group is working on. That's what Theo and the Salvation Army are all about. So this group is really heading in the right direction.
Next question.
Okay, good evening, everyone. Thanks for being here tonight. I'm Joanne Price. I'm VP of Real Estate for Life Moves. And it's remarkable what you brought together here and the amount of effort and support and dedication that you're putting to this course. My question relates to those who are homeless and the lived experience. We're hearing a lot about it now, and we're making in Life Moves a big strides to incorporate that voice. And I'd like to hear from some of you how you're incorporating the voice of the lived experience in what you're doing and implementing. Thank you.
Yeah, we'll start with Theo. Yeah.
I'm going to call Thomas Wolf out because in a good way. Please give Thomas the mic on behalf of the Salvation Army.
Hi, so my name is Thomas Wolf. I do have lived experience. I'm formerly homeless. In 2018, exactly 4 years ago right now, I was sleeping on the streets of the Tenderloin. So I actually got off the street with the help of the Salvation Army. I went through one of their rehabilitation programs, and that program in and of itself ended my homelessness. And because it was an inpatient program, and then from there I went to step down housing and got back on my feet. And I think that's why this program and what they're doing is incredibly important, because just building more affordable housing is definitely part of the solution. We can incorporate all the wraparound services like Senator Wiener was talking about, but housing is a huge component of all of this. You know, in my advocacy, I put a lot of focus on the drug crisis that's out there right now, and it is very real and it's present and all that, but we can't find an end solution if we don't have a place to send people at the end. So involving voices of lived experience, I think is a great idea, especially for me, because I'm going to come in and I'm going to just be totally brutally honest with everybody about what it's really like to be out on the street, what it takes to get off the street. It takes help. It takes time. It takes, you know, a lot of accountability from that individual and ownership from the individual itself. But watching all of you up here, I have a greater understanding now myself how many different pieces of the puzzle must come together to create these opportunities for people to get off the street. So I just want to say thank you to all of you. I'm grateful to all of you for your efforts. And I think together we can make something really big happen. So thank you.
I'd just like to add that we're also, and first, welcome to the Alliance. We're happy to have Life's Moves recently join. And we're looking to add someone to our team as well who has lived experience at UVA, not just relying on our partners who are on the ground, but also in our office as well. So that's a goal of ours for this year. Thank you. Jason.
So I don't know if this is a question for Scott, since you've dealt with this in San Antonio or whomever, but what incentives are in place or would be in place to get someone to go from the transitional housing state to actually move on in their life from there? Because if you've got transitional, you've got the basic needs, you're way a step higher than you were in the streets. What incentives actually get people to move out from that state?
That is a loaded and complicated question. But what incentives? Do people want to live on the street? Do people want to be drug addicted? Do people want to be an alcoholic? Generally, the answer is no, but that's what they know. People experiencing homelessness have huge incidents of trauma. Studies indicate females experiencing homelessness, one study, 85% of females experiencing homelessness were sexually abused before their 5th birthday, or 65%, 85 to 90% have been victims of violence. So you've got this trauma that's untreated that leads to these other issues. people don't necessarily want to be unhealthy, but if that's the only path they see, that's the path they're going to go down. And kind of what Thea was talking about, when you can give people a different vision for their life and a different path to go down and walk them down that path, you don't need incentives, you don't need behavior modification. And I will say to the peer question, when we started at Haven, 0% of our staff were peers. Now about 35% of the workforce is peers. And what a more powerful tool to show a path to hope and change than peer supports.
Okay, we'll go Adrian and then we'll go there.
You started in San Francisco. Tell me about where you go next. What are the ingredients for a good, viable community and city to partner with? What are you looking for?
Well, any city is going to be easier than San Francisco. That's the truth. And it's the truth for a few reasons. You have water on all sides. You have some of the most expensive land. You have a dense population. You have lots of entrenched interests. And it's difficult to get everyone rowing in the same direction. Everything will be easier. East Bay will be easier with land. Marin, we're already talking about properties in South and the Peninsula and in South Bay. We will expand to the 9 Bay Area counties and 101 cities because homelessness is not a San Francisco problem. It's a regional problem. People can get on the BART and they can come over, and we know that and we talk about it. And I think as a community of people working on this, that's important part of the conversation now. So Urban Vision Alliance couldn't just work in San Francisco. We have to work across the whole Bay Area to start as metropolitan statistical areas. So part of our platform strategy is to enable us to do that. But we know that we're already talking to organizations, nonprofits, and government bodies, and have identified 362 properties across the state of California already, with just a few conversations that could be used to create housing for homelessness. And we're excited to grow.
Hi, everyone. I'm Sharon Lai. I'm the Executive Director of Dignity Moves. Thank you for the Alliance's partnership and happy to be here. I have a question, I think mainly for Theo, maybe for Gabriel. I think from the development side, things are going great from my perspective. One of the challenges that I'm seeing, not just for San Francisco, but for other municipalities too, is the adequacy of sufficient trained service providers really on the operation side. I think we're all here recognizing that we need a whole lot of this, right? We're already building, there's a huge pipeline. What are we doing? How can this group step up to encourage the workforce development? Because I feel like that's going to be a pretty important component in us reversing the homelessness count that we have.
I don't know the answer to that question, but what I can tell you is that you'd be amazed what a job does for a person's confidence. You asked a question about, or you mentioned the comment about the sort of peer-to-peer involvement. I mean, we did something as simple as take clients out of their residential facility and took them to lunch at La Cocina, of all places. And the morale that we built from that just enabled this group to see that, again, if you set someone on a path, they're likely to go down that path if they see that their peers are doing the same thing. I talked about the electrician training. We're connecting. One of the beautiful things about this program is we, as the Salvation Army, we're sort of staying in our lane in terms of what we want to do, right? Recovery, drug and alcohol recovery. And we're partnering with other organizations to do things like workforce development. You look at the City Build program. I think we sent 1 or 2 clients through the City Build program for the construction trades so that they're able to, again, fill their gap employment and also get the necessary skills they need to get a better job. I call it the sort of ABCs of jobs: a job, a better job, and then a career. So when you have, write that one down. No, when you have, again, these clear pathways for folks, that's the incentive that they need to go and change their lives. On the other side, to answer the other sort of half of your question, if you will, we see some of our best employees are folks with lived experience, folks who have come through our program, folks who can talk to individuals who have that same experience that they have. So we haven't formalized that yet, but there are many folks who are going through our program who make good counselors. We have peer-led sessions where folks in our Harbor Light program lead recovery meetings. So we're on the brink of something, but I think to your point, it's about, again, we're looking at the private sector and we're looking at the workforce shortage. It's a clear sort of area of connectivity where we have a pool of talent and we need to connect them to jobs. We've got a partnership with Tesla that we're working on where we're literally, again, walking alongside clients and allowing them to connect to these employers who need people. So.
I just want to add, we have two incredible organizations in our alliance here also who may want to comment. One is Miracle Messages, is doing incredible work. And Back on My Feet, also who I know who has a robust workforce training program. If either of you want to comment, jump in.
Yeah, I'm happy to briefly share a little bit in terms of how we really leverage this workforce development impact in creating, that career, creating that self-sufficiency down the road. And for us at Back on My Feet, to go back to what you were saying, Gabriel, around it takes a lot of different organizations doing things different ways to really be able to make an impact for this whole community, because it's a community of human beings. And for us at Back on My Feet, the way that we approach the workforce development is so individualized and so personalized for each member client that is coming through our program, living at our partner facilities and working with us on breaking down barriers to employment, upskilling for the workforce, and then connecting with employers and jobs and careers. We aren't just putting someone through a program to get the same job that everyone else is getting. We're working with individuals to figure out what their interests are, their passions are, what experience they might have that they don't even see as experience, and being able to then apply that to their future in the workforce development space. So for us at Back on My Feet, we build that community, but then we also take that really individualized approach, and we see such success from that.
I think just real quick, the barrier removal piece is huge because, imagine living on the streets and being chronically homeless. You're not there by accident. There's multiple reasons, whether there's health issues or, something as basic as a driver's license or, restitution or whatever the case may be. There are always some sort of financial barrier that prevents one from getting a job. So we appreciate your work.
And Back on My Feet actually starts by taking people walking and jogging in the mornings and builds a community that way and builds their confidence and then transitions it to career development. So if you don't know about them, check them out. It's great.
If I may, Gabriel, I'd like to respond a little bit to that. So I'm doing some work with another community that's having that same issue. The cost of living in that community is so much that the social workers working in homeless services can't afford to live there. So we're working with local universities to establish paid internship programs, loan forgiveness programs, specialized training. And so we can attract and retain social workers particularly in the homelessness. And I think that's probably going to be some good partners for Urban Vision Alliance moving forward.
Next question, Eric Chen.
Thanks. It sounds like the incredible work that the various constituents of the Alliance are doing. Sounds like it's expensive, it requires funding. And so while there's definitely a shortage of housing in the Bay Area, there's certainly not a shortage of money in the Bay Area. So I guess my question is, are there creative ways that the Alliance is thinking about funding these projects, either different business models or different sources of funding, or just what's the plan for funding this?
Yeah, and I'll start just by first distinguishing. We're certainly raising funding for Urban Vision Alliance to build our tech platform, to build our team, to build the structure to work at the system level. Separately, our goal is to help each of these organizations fundraise for their actual projects where people will live and sleep. So right now we're focused on philanthropy. Over time, we think we can be eligible for government grants, but any donors out there, come and see us. And with that, I actually want to leave it to the people building buildings to each speak to their own strategies for fundraising.
Well, I could go first on our temporary projects. We do bring in philanthropy. The San Francisco project, as I mentioned, the construction of it was 100% funded by philanthropy. Santa Barbara is 50% the county and 50% philanthropy. On the condition then that the city or county steps up to pay for the ongoing supportive services, because I think it's really difficult to have philanthropy worried about, recurring annual success of these programs. So that's the model that we've been doing so far. And then of course, government grants from state of California's Project Home Key. We are working on trying to come up with some additional creative methods. So for instance, maybe an impact investment fund, which is my last 18 years of my life, where people could invest in constructing the units and then we could lease them to cities and counties, nonprofits or hospitals or anybody else who wants to confirm that those units continue to be used. And so there are going to be lots of other ways. But yeah, so far, initially at least, it's the generosity of donors. Who else is going to go?
Theo.
Yeah.
What she said. No. No, I think, almost, yeah. I think looking at the private sector, obviously, and looking at philanthropy, I think we are blessed to have a brand like the Salvation Army that has recognition across every zip code in the United States. So that definitely helps. But then going to the city with sort of an innovative idea and trying to negotiate, right? We've got obviously Prop C here locally. We're seeing funds come down from the state and the federal government. We've got local contracts with Department of Public Health and adult probation to get folks through recovery. And then we're also going to be digging through on the state level as well, looking at, there's a bunch of these small departments that give out lots of money for homelessness. So really knocking on the governor's door and looking at these huge investments that are coming down the pipeline. One thing that I will say is I think the window of opportunity is very, very small here. As I'm sure you can attest to, that we're going off the bankrolls of like a year ago, 2 years ago. So that window is closing very, very quickly. So being able to raise funds is going to be super, super important to the success for all of these projects.
And I think there's opportunities in everything you just heard. I think there's opportunities to better coordinate best practices for pursuing different sources of government capital, public capital and public funding. Prop C, we do need more money for transitional housing there, but not every city has a Prop C. And like I said, this is a Bay Area problem. So one of the things we want to do is create a real estate finance advisory committee at Urban Envision Alliance to create these repeatable models and to be able to employ tax incentive zones and other things very quickly to help our partners get up to speed on the options and to try to create the kind of repeatable structure that we see with affordable housing and low-income housing tax credits. We need that for transitional housing, those structural models. Also, I think with our platform, we can actually tilt not just large donors, but the general public into being able to support all these different projects and to having confidence and being able to see that I want to support and provide the beds for this facility or the fitness equipment for this facility. So I think there's work that we can do at the public level and work that we can do at the private level too, to tap into more dollars and funding. Michelle.
Yeah, hey, Gabe, Ernst Bauer, the Salvation Army Development. Our team raises about $26 million a year throughout the region, and much of that's in San Francisco. Then you add another 10 to 15 million from plan gifts. That's a lot of money our team brings in. So I think that the focus now is, really seek these additional private funders. And yes, government's important, but they have a lot of strings. So I think as an alliance, maybe you guys can team up with our team and, figure out how to bring in some money, because the window is closing, as Theo said. It's funding, it's key to this thing right now. So.
And there is billions of dollars sitting in donor advised funds.
Right.
People have committed to get the tax benefits and they just haven't decided where it's going yet. There's a reason that we found exceptional projects that are smart. And there's a reason that we mobilize the real estate industry to show people what's possible first. And everyone up here is sending a message that we, as the strategists, as the consultants, as the architects, as the engineers, that we're stepping up to do our job and show a vision of what can be built. And now we need the donors to step up and do their job.
Yeah, I think we should just try to strategize on that front, because that's the key right now. Major?
I'm done.
How we doing on time? Okay, take a few more. Please.
Yeah, I was just curious on the, you use the word collective impact and 100+ organizations and all the members, kind of just even the one sitting on the panel here. How are you tracking at the individual level, people who are kind of migrating, hopefully up and through and out? It just seems like there's a data, I'm sure you're already, it's probably already happening. I'm just really curious about the individualized tracking of individuals to understand whether you're successful in the goal. And I know it's a huge challenge and I don't know enough about the system, about if and how it's happening.
Great question. And there's a couple of different answers to that. I know there's people up here who are going to want to talk about HMIS and their own systems. And I'll just start by saying that we've added a new alliance partner who's former Amazon executive, who's building an entire new nonprofit organization called Bill Dunn Technologies to create new software systems to help all of our partners better track outcomes and to inform care in a way that hasn't been done before in the industry, using kind of this private sector predictive analytics and bringing it into this industry. And that's an important new alliance member for us. Bill Dunn Technologies. Yeah. And we're excited to have them to start. We've made introductions already to our partners so they can start working together to build that. With that, I will let Scott, Theo, and Elizabeth comment on the current state of affairs for facilities' ability to track people and outcomes across the city.
Well, I would love to say it's great tracking and exact science, but it's not. So every jurisdiction that receives federal funding is required to have a system called Homeless Management Information System. Unfortunately, every jurisdiction can have their own tracking mechanism. It's not standardized across the United States. So you really, when you aggregate that data at the federal level, it's really kind of mishmash data. And different communities do point in time counts differently. So it's really not scientific, and there's a long way to go in terms of tracking and homeless services.
Yeah, I would agree with that. I think we, our Harbor Light facility, for example, I think 100+ beds at our residential treatment program. We see about 1,000 folks a year. And just the demand and the need and it is so deep that a lot of times we don't have the infrastructure or the sort of ability to track. And that's one of the areas of opportunity. If any Alliance member wants to step up with we've got a sort of population of folks ready for that type of service. But I mean, we're sort of peeling the layers back a bit and going to things like surveys, really to track where folks are coming from initially and to get a deeper understanding of the clientele we're dealing with. And that will help us as we gear up to that sort of post 6 months, that 2 to 3 year program that we alluded to, is to understand where folks are coming from, to be able to provide those services, and then to see the trends as we look to a person at 5 months. Like, what are the different, where do folks need to be? What are the different sort of areas of the checklists that folks need to be, or the skill sets that folks need to have to be successful post 6 months? So those are just some of the questions and the initial sort of approaches we're taking.
Well, on behalf of Dignity Moves, I don't have an answer because our first people just moved in today, so no one's left. But I'm also on the board of Life Moves, and I did want to just give echo the fact that the HMIS system is, it is not sufficient. And so I know that Life Moves has been working really hard on their own data analysis of tracking where their graduates go, and also starting to be more granular about who's coming in and what kind of outcomes do we expect by segment. Because everybody's not the same, right? And so, what's the success rate of placement into permanent housing is the wrong question, right? It's what is the barrier that each of our residents are trying to overcome, and what is our ability to get them over that? So, but I think largely you're finding the best organizations are starting to do their own tracking, because it's just, it's incomplete what is being tracked in the big county databases.
Well, thank you. I want to keep us on time. I just want to say thank you again to all the organizations that are not just up here, but that are part of this, and the individuals involved in creating a new chapter and how the community can come together to address street homelessness. And for those of you online, we look forward to hearing from you. And you're going to hear more from us on our tech platform and others. Go to our website, urbanvisionalliance.org. And thank you all again for your time. And thank you all again